Lea, yung gagawin niyo po sa Broadway? Ano po siya paging content?
Pakwento naman.
Okay. The title of the show is Allegiance, and we actually had a production of it in 2012 at the Old Globe in San Diego, and it was actually inspired. We all know who George Takei is from Star Trek, and anyone who's even seen one episode of Star Trek will know him as he's the only Asian, I think, on the crew. And as he says, I know how to drive a ship. And he's incredibly funny. But there was one experience in his life that was incredibly tragic, in that he became one of hundreds of thousands of Japanese Americans who were interned into internment camps up and down the West Coast just because he was of Japanese descent. In December of 1941, the Japanese bombed Pearl Harbor. And then that began this string of prejudice and bigotry and fear against the Japanese American community only because they were Japanese American. And it's a part of history that isn't told very often. So it's also a part of history that has the potential to be repeated. Maybe not against the Japanese Americans, but maybe against the Muslim American community, whether they are from Lebanon or from Pakistan. But if you see a woman in wearing a hijab, or you see a man with the white hat on, parang there was one Facebook post that I read about this one young lady who was on a flight on United Airlines asking for a can of Diet Coke, but hindi buksan. And parang she was told, no, we cannot give unopened cans because you may use it as a weapon. And it's like, and then then the flight attendant gave an unopened can to the person beside her. So it's like, and then one of the other passengers growled at her, saying all kinds of hateful things to her. And my reaction upon reading this is like, oh my God, it's happening again. It's like we've just been thrown back, but into 1941. But it's not. It's another community that's being targeted. So there is great cultural and historical relevance in the staging of this show because of what is happening still in America today. That there is going to be a group that will be targeted only because of either their religious belief, the color of their skin, their racial or ethnic background, their last names, and how they look, because they're not seen as American. Like they're just as American as everyone that came in from Russia or Ireland, hoping for a better life in this land of milk and honey. And to target them is like, why? There is so much intolerance and so much bigotry still. And hopefully this show opens the eyes of audiences that it's still happening, this is happening, this actually happened. And by presidential decree, 120,000 were placed in camps in Arkansas, in Wyoming, in California, in some of the most desolate, harsh conditions. They have to endure windy, cold weathers with walls thinner than this. And these are people from California who are not used to the cold, so there are many casualties because of it. Many babies died, many old people died, but the community was one that held on to their dignity no matter what, and held on to their traditions, and held on to everything they held dear in spite of the persecution that they were on the receiving end of. So yeah, I get to play one of the 120,000 that gets carted off on a train and thrown into a camp. And the story itself, I mean, it doesn't want to be depressing, but because the community itself held its head high in spite of the number of years behind barbed wire fences and enduring bigotry and prejudice and massive land grabbing and property loss and the loss of basically everything in their lives. It was still a community that said gaman, which is, you know, perseverance, hold your head high and carry on in spite of everything. So it's an inspiring story, and that George Takei came out of it as an LGBT activist and one of the loudest, especially on social media, with millions of followers, as an actor and an author. It's inspiring. So he's a very inspiring presence to be around. And knowing that it's his life that inspired the show that we are just a part of, it's like you are with living history, shoulder to shoulder with this man. It's amazing. It's an amazing experience that I'm looking forward to being a part of.